MyFertilityCharts.com supports many different types of analysis. We'll now take a look at these types and go into some more details on each individually. From the main menu, you can access the individual analysis tools under the Analysis Links category. We'll discuss 5 different types of analysis, and these are shown below and highlighted in blue. You could click on these page links to access each of these individual features. They include event analysis, cycle statistics, ovulation test recommendations, gender swaying, and pregnancy. First, we'll discuss event analysis. Event analysis is a useful tool that allows you to show patterns in recorded events pertaining to the start or the end of your menstrual cycle, or perhaps even ovulation itself. The frequency of an event being recorded on a given date of your cycle is expressed as a percentage, between 0 and 100. 0 tells us that the event has never been recorded on that specific day when looking back at all recorded cycles, and 100 means that it has always been recorded on all past cycles which have been indicated in the system and recorded. Higher numbers are shaded more darkly to make interpretation of this plot easier. So for example, you can look here and you can see one of the darker days on this plot is right here, and it is marked with an 88, which means that 88% of the time, looking back at historic cycles, this specific category, the category event here, this event, migraine headache, was recorded on 7 days prior to ovulation. So you can see patterns related either to ovulation, to the beginning of your cycle, or to the end of your cycle, depending on what display options you've set. This is an interesting way to look at all the events you've recorded and try to see if there's some type of a pattern associated with your cycle. So to use this feature, you'll start off by first selecting a technique. You may be interested in aligning the cycle start dates to look for patterns with events that tend to occur maybe exactly at the beginning of your cycle, or maybe 3 days into your cycle, or a week into your cycle, etc. You can also align the primary ovulation dates. This option is actually the case which is shown below here. It will set up the ovulation date as day 0 here and use that as alignment. And then you can look and see if there's patterns immediately after, maybe during or before ovulation, that if you look at all the recorded events, is there some consistency in when certain events occur relative to the date of ovulation. Lastly, you can also do this for the end of the cycle. So if you're interested in seeing if there's patterns maybe on the last day of your cycle, or maybe 5 days before the last day of your cycle, you can look at all events and try to see if you can find any patterns there. The next feature we'll take a look at are basic cycle statistics. Cycle statistics are accessible from the main menu as well, and you'll come to a page that looks like this. At the top, you'll find basic statistics, which include the length of cycles, your longest and shortest cycle, and additional information. Below that, you'll find a cycle history table. This table itemizes all cycles which you've recorded and gives you some basic information about each. Further down on the page, you'll find your pregnancy history. If you've recorded any pregnancies in the MyFertilityCharts system, these will be itemized and described in a table very similar to the cycle history which is shown up here. It will be present down at the bottom of the page though. We'll next discuss recommended test dates. If you're using ovulation tests, you can use this calendar to help decide when to take the ovulation test. The recommended days for ovulation testing are highlighted using this simple icon here. If the site determines that you should use ovulation test on that date with an ovulation test predictor kit, you can see that by finding this icon on a given date. If you hover your mouse over that date, you'll see a tooltip which will appear, which will specify this in more detail by saying this date is recommended for ovulation testing. This calendar shows some additional information as well. Most notably, you can quickly view and see all recorded ovulation test results. These will show up as little red boxes with either a plus sign if the ovulation test result was positive, or a negative sign if the recorded ovulation test result was negative. If you hover your mouse over, as is shown here, it will give you additional information on that test result too, specifying whether it's positive or negative. which you can tell just by looking at the plus or minus sign. There's additional information which is available to you as well, including intercourse notes. If you have recorded intercourse notes for a specific day, the double heart icon will show up. You can view what those notes are by hovering your mouse over that icon, and a tooltip will appear and show it to you. If you have recorded personal notes, this clipboard, which we've looked at previously, will also appear on that date. You can similarly hover your mouse over that clipboard, and a tooltip will appear and show you the personal notes that you've recorded on that date. Gender swaying is another feature that's available on the site. To use the gender swaying feature, you first need to begin by picking the date of interest. You can do this by clicking on a date on the mini calendar in the upper right. Once you've selected a date, the gender swaying feature will tell you the likelihood of conceiving a boy or a girl on that date. By default, a given date is assumed to have equal probability, but based upon the Shettles method, it will tell you if you're slightly more likely to conceive a girl or slightly more likely to conceive a boy based upon the specific date and where that is relative to ovulation. To use this feature, like I said, you'll first begin by picking the date of interest. Once you've done that, it will load the gender chances for that date, and then you'll have to select a technique. Your three options are ovulation testing, which will look at your ovulation test results which you've recorded, your positive and negative test results, to determine when ovulation is and use that to base the assessment on gender prediction. You can also use the declared ovulation technique. This will look back at the calculated overall ovulation date based upon all recorded symptoms. Or, if you've manually specified an ovulation date, it will use that manually specified ovulation date. Your last option is to use the calendar method. The calendar method, which is also called the rhythm method, is a simple approach that just extrapolates past cycles into the future to do a rough estimate of when ovulation occurs. You can use this technique too to base the decisions that are shown here if you choose it by clicking on it. Independent of which technique you click on, the results will be shown in a similar format, which is shown down here. It will show you the likelihood of conceiving either a girl or a boy, and which is more likely, or if neither is, it will show right down the middle and say there's an equal likelihood of conception of either gender. This technique uses the Shettles method, which is very popular despite some unproven effectiveness. This is discussed in more detail at the bottom of the page after the About the Shettles method title. So you can read more about it down there and read more about the overall analysis and ovulation date and other information, which will be displayed on this page to learn a little bit more about it. The last feature we'll talk about is pregnancy. The pregnancy page can be accessed from the main menu by clicking on the pregnancy link, and this will allow you to record conceptions, manage your due dates, and view overall pregnancy progress. To start off, when you first come to this page, you will likely need to record a new pregnancy if you have not done so already. To do this, you'll simply use this calendar that shows up here and pick the conception date of interest. Once you've chosen a conception date, the upper calendar up here will be updated to show that you're currently pregnant during that gestation period. You can click on dates within that pregnancy to view overall pregnancy status. You can also make changes to that pregnancy. So for example, once a pregnancy has been recorded, you can click on a date in that pregnancy and then come down here and maybe change the conception date if you wanted to, or more likely maybe you want to manage the due date. You want to make changes to it. So you can go and specify the due date and make adjustments using the additional options which will be apparent down here once you've scheduled a pregnancy.